Talent, it's equally distributed, but opportunities not so much. That's an interesting quote from someone you'll want to hear from. Talking the world of finance, money, markets, savings accounts, 401ks, all of it, with Milken Institute's Troy Duffie coming right up. Hello everyone, this is Jabari Young, senior writer at Forbes, and I'm in the Forbes studio here, and I'm joined by a special guest. The brother's name is Troy Duffie. He is the Director of Financial Markets at Milken Institute, and he also leads the Milken Institute's HBCU Strategic Initiatives and Fellows Program. Now, for those who don't know, the Milken Institute is an economic think tank based out in California, co-founded by investor and self-made billionaire Michael Milken, who Forbes says is worth $7 billion. And he's also the man, because it's Black History Month, responsible for financing Reginald Lewis. And Reginald Lewis is credited as being the first Black individual to start and have a billion-dollar company here in the U.S., man. So you are at the Milken Institute. Troy, thank you so much for making a trip, man, all the way here to our Forbes studio. I'm usually at the NASDAQ, but here we are now. I appreciate the time, man.
Man, I appreciate the opportunity. It's wonderful to be here. Happy Black History Month to you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm glad that you said that because I want to definitely start there because it is Black History Month. What business figure, right? Black business figure stands out to you that maybe nobody ever talks about? And you can't say Frederick Douglass because Maya already did that one. He already used it before.
Listen, there are too many to name.
Yeah.
I'm a Howard University graduate, and I was sharing this with some friends yesterday. What you realize when you go to an HBCU, especially when you go to Howard, is that you're part of a lineage of individuals who have come before you, and they set a standard that you're consistently trying to reach. And so I am a huge fan of Vernon Jordan, who's a Howard University grad, served on probably the most boards of any African-American individual. Vernon Jordan is a huge deal to me. John Jacob, who also used to chair the Howard University board, was the president of the National Urban League, went on to be an executive at Anheuser-Busch, comes back to Howard every year, gives $100,000 to the school, gives $10,000 to the chapel. So Saul got to hang out with him. Frank A. Thomas, one of the individuals who led the Ford Foundation, Raymond McGuire, Reginald Lewis, Robert Smith, man, the list goes on and on for people that I just look up to, really revere, and have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, again, when we talk about what's going on right now in 2025, we sit in Black History Month, but so much happening, right? I mean, you had the horrific start to the year with things going on down in New Orleans, plane crashes, new presidential administration coming in, policy changes. Super Bowl and NBA All-Star Game is here, so we get a little bit of upliftment. But if you had to describe the year for you so far, and again, we're still early here in February 2025, what word would it be to describe what you've seen so far in 2025?
Yeah, change.
Change.
So much has changed in the last. It's been about 5 weeks since the year has started.
Yeah.
You brought up the plane crash. Like I said, I'm a Howard grad. I have a ton of friends who knew one of the individuals.
Yeah, the young lady.
Yeah, Miss Duggins, and it's unbelievable. How many people have been impacted by it.
Right.
So I think that's one thing. Grappling with the new administration, all the new changes. I live in D.C. I'm based in D.C. Milken Institute has an office in D.C. And there have been so many changes there. And so I would just say that change has been a huge word for me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So much has changed, and I'm sure it will continue to change as we go through the year. Again, so early in 2025. But hey, man, let's jump into what's going on at the Milken Institute, man. Give us the latest before I hop into interview style.
Yeah.
What's happening over there? I know you guys do a lot of great work, economic think tank again. You publish or you do a lot of white papers.
Yeah.
I tried to get one of them, but it had a little like icon on there, so I guess I ain't in there yet. But that's all good. Hopefully you can set that up for me. But the work that you guys do and the Milken Conference coming up, one of the best worldly conferences. I was a big admirer, and I'm looking forward to going out there this year in Beverly Hills.
We're happy to have you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the invite. Anytime somebody invites you to Beverly Hills, you got to go, right? But what's happening over there, man? What's the latest?
Yeah, absolutely. So we were started about 30 years ago.
Yeah.
To your point, as a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank. We are based in Santa Monica, California, but we have offices in Washington, D.C., in New York City, in Miami, Florida, Abu Dhabi, in London, in Asia, right, in Singapore. And so I have been doing great work for a long time. Our entire goal is to transform the world of financial markets, and we do that a number of different ways. We have a fintech program that focuses on using fintech in terms of financial inclusion. We have a program called Lifetime Financial Security, right? That makes sure that somebody has a chance to thrive from the beginning of their life until the end of their life. So not just retirement, but how do you prosper with baby bonds and some of those other opportunities. I run a program called Inclusive Capitalism, and that program is really designed to change the asset management industry. Our belief is that if you change the asset management industry, you can change the world. So many people are so unaware of how much the asset management industry impacts them on their daily life.
That's right.
If you are a police officer,
pensions,
if you're a firefighter, if you are a teacher, right, your pension plan is invested by the asset management industry. But not just that, if you walked outside today, you walked on a sidewalk, that sidewalk was probably funded by an asset manager. It was probably the bridge you drove on today, the street that you live on, all of those things are impacted by the asset management industry.
That's right.
And so that level of impact, we want to make sure that the people who are investing those dollars and how those dollars are invested have the greatest impact possible.
Yeah. Well, take me inside of your title, right? Director of Financial Markets. What does that mean? Like, give me an example of your day-to-day.
Yeah. Oh, man. I wear a lot of hats at the Milken Institute. So you mentioned one program that I run. About 3 years ago, we launched the HBCU Strategic Initiative and Fellows Program.
Yeah.
It's a program that's near and dear to my heart. My colleague, Blair Smith, a senior director at the Milken Institute, also a Morgan State, also a HBCU grad, a graduate from Morgan State. We had a vision for a program and wanted to launch it.
Yeah.
The way that program works is we take students from all over the country, 20 students each cohort, and we educate them on financial markets. And so the idea is, if you want to understand about private equity, we'll do a course on private equity. We want to do hedge funds, venture capital, fintech, take you through that coursework. But what's even more important than that is we get them an opportunity to learn and to meet some of the titans of industry.
That's right.
And so they'll sit down and have conversations one-on-one, spent time with Michael Milken, spent time with Vern Perry, who's at Blackstone, right? We're talking about the Robert Smiths, the Kim Lew's of the world, who are investing hundreds of billions of dollars, right, on behalf of either a pension plan, a sovereign wealth fund, or in Kim's case, on behalf of a university.
Yeah, Columbia.
Right?
Yeah.
And so incredible opportunity to meet some of those folks and to see where they are in the world compared to where those folks are.
Yeah.
And so that's an incredible opportunity. They go from that point and then go into internships and jobs.
I know you called it an on-ramp, right?
Yeah.
And I love that word, because when you think about asset management and all that goes on with it, I mean, I got involved a while ago, like just municipal bonds and where that is. And so, but it's an on-ramp to those individuals who, when you think about it, highway, right? You to get on, you got to get on an on-ramp, right? You cannot do it unless you're on that on-ramp. And so this is another on-ramp into getting into that asset management class. But what's been the biggest surprise about your role and all those hats that you're wearing at Milken?
Yeah. How much
positive surprise? Let me say positive surprise. Let me emphasize that. What's been the biggest positive surprise?
How much it changes day to day. And so I've done research. We've done 2 papers, or working on a third and a fourth one. We took on a new project that's focused on venture capital managers, making sure that they get access to capital via relationships. And so setting up dinners and setting up meaningful conversations and introductions, doing research on them specifically. We've launched the HBCU program. I speak a lot, and so a lot of conferences, a lot of travel. I'm doing thought leadership on some of the things that we're working on at the Institute. It's everything about how much it's evolved. And I say it evolves every 3 months, right? And so what I was doing when I started the Institute about 2.5 years ago is nowhere near what's on my plate now, right? The plate continues to expand. It's a very entrepreneurial place too. And so if you have a great idea, it's a place where you can jump in the water and get it off. I'll share this story. I got the opportunity to do a one-on-one interview with Maxine Waters at the Global Conference about 2 years ago. And after the interview, I said, the Milken Institute reminds me of what it was like growing up in Miami. In Miami, I had summer pool lessons every summer, right? And my mother would never take us to the suburbs to learn how to swim. She'd take you to the hood. Yeah. And so you had to, and they don't teach you how to swim by taking you to 3 foot and let you get the strokes in. They take you to the 12 foot
and throw you in.
And throw you in.
Yeah.
And you figure it out.
You sink or swim. Survival.
And so Milken is that place where you get a chance to really dive in and to figure it out.
What about the biggest negative surprise, right?
Yeah.
We all get up in the morning sometime, oh my God, I don't feel like doing this. What's the biggest negative surprise maybe about it?
I gotta be honest with you, man. It is the most incredible place I've ever worked.
Yeah.
It's the most incredible place I've ever been a part of. I don't think there's been a negative surprise. I think how hard we work at a think tank, I think that's probably, I wouldn't say a negative surprise, but a surprise you wouldn't think. But I'm doing banker hours at a think tank. I'm sending out emails at 10, 11 o'clock at night because the work is so intriguing and so exciting and so exhilarating that it really gets me up and it gets me going.
Is that the negative surprise that you're doing banking hours? Because listen, in full transparency, I do not hold back from the audience. This man beat me here. We had an early 11 o'clock in the morning interview, and this man shows up at 10. I'm getting messages like he's here. I'm like, wait a minute. We didn't agree to that. And so, is that maybe the negative is that you're doing all of these hours? Because, listen, we all want to chill sometimes, too.
Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying the work. And it's, you don't always get a place that will let you do the kind of work that is meaningful and that's transformative to your community. And so whether it's seeing these students' lives transformed, I think that's special to watch. Whether it's seeing your research read at the White House, I think that's amazing. Whether it's going and speaking on a panel and watching people change their perspective on what you were talking about because of that panel, I think the work is just it really drives me forward. And so I don't think it's been negative at all.
Yeah. Well, let's take a step back right fast, man, because, again, you mentioned you grew up in Miami, right? And I'm listening to a podcast that you did, and then you were talking about traveling between 2 neighborhoods, right? You had the North Miami Beach where you were at, and then you had the Overton section, which was once back in the day considered colored town. And so when you talk about growing up in Miami, what was that like for you?
Yeah. So to your point, 2 different worlds.
Yeah.
I grew up and lived in an area called North Miami Beach. It's a suburb right outside of Miami, about 15 minutes north of downtown. And my family, my cousins, friends, church was in an area called Overtown. And so I'm a church baby. I spent all of my time going back and forth between the 2. And Miami, the parts you see online and on TV and, are some of the best parts, right? It's the palm trees and it's colorful, very well heeled. But as a 5 or 6-year-old, you're traveling between that world and a world of poverty, a world of crime, a world of dilapidation. And at 5 or 6 years old, I could very clearly articulate there is something wrong here, right? To go between palm trees, to go to there not being any grass. And so at a young age, I was trying to figure out why that was, because I knew the history of Overtown. My grandparents talked about it. Overtown, for those who are not familiar, is called the Harlem of the South, right? So you can imagine Duke Ellington playing and Muhammad Ali training in Overtown before his big fight in Miami. That movie, One Night in Miami, is film that talks about Overtown being that place of a black economic center. And I made up in my mind at 15 years old, I want to figure this out and I want to do something about this. Yeah. So went to Howard University, majored in economics, community development, now chair on the Affordable Housing Board in South Florida. That's focused on building projects. We have a big project that we're closing on relatively soon. That'll be about, I think, 180 units of affordable housing specifically in that area. And so we're excited about what we're continuing to do there. But it made an impression on me on how do you do something to make sure this doesn't happen consistently. The reason Overtown became Overtown was because they built 195 and I-95. If you look at a map of Overtown, north to south, right down the middle, and east to west right across. Right, so Overtown was divided into 4 quadrants. The land that was owned by black business owners, that was owned by black churches, was taken via eminent domain. And the community then experienced blight, crime, et cetera. And so, wanting to build a world and build a career that addresses that has really been my goal.
Yeah, and because your church was based over in the Overtown area, you were always over there. But what'd your mom do?
Yeah, so my mom's an attorney.
She was an attorney.
Yeah, she's an attorney, but she also runs an organization, the Charmets Incorporated. Yeah. They raise money for breast cancer. National president of that. They raised about $1 million for Howard Breast Cancer Research, and so it's been an incredible thing to see her come into her own.
What about your dad?
My dad does a lot of different things. My dad's a minister. My dad's a safety engineer.
That's why you was in church, huh? That's okay.
Yeah, my dad actually was my youth pastor growing up.
Nice.
And so
did you have to like navigate that carefully? Your mom's an attorney,
Yeah.
so you get in trouble. No, you got to out. But then your dad's a pastor, so if you do get in trouble, you know you're gonna have it like you're gonna get preached to. It's all crazy. Like my grandma grew up in the church, and you didn't want her to get on you.
Yeah.
But like, did you have to walk like a straight line?
It very much so. I have 4 siblings, and all.
Are you the
us,
oldest or the youngest?
I'm the middle child.
Okay.
I'm the middle child, and so all of us, had to walk a very, very straight path because they were equal opportunity. The attorney and the minister, in terms of how much correction you got, how much feedback you got, how strict they were. And so I tell people I grew up in Miami, but I grew up at 720, my home address in Miami, not in Miami, hanging out on the street at night. We were inside. And so man, it definitely was a strict childhood.
Nice, man. Well, when you talk about you were at Howard, right, and here you are, you get a BA in economics, right? Bachelor's degree in economics, and then you go on and get a master's degree in finance. So you're coming out of Howard University, right, down in the D.C. area. Shout out to Clyde's, right? We were supposed to meet over there before. But you're coming out of that D.C. area, coming out of Howard. Where's your mind at, right? We already know you got the terminology down. Like, you know what eminent domain is. Where's your mind at? What's the soundtrack? Like, who are you listening to as you're navigating what's next coming out of Howard? Like, what's the musician that's playing in your head?
Yeah, I'm a huge Robert Glasper fan. So Robert Glasper is playing in my head all the time. I grew up playing jazz.
Yeah.
And so was listening to him.
What instrument? Because I played the trumpet.
Oh man, piano. I can still play, man. I played my way through school.
So you got some McCoy Tyner in your collection.
Come on, McCoy Tyner, everybody, man.
Yes.
So jazz, piano. I play set too, and then we were in orchestra, so every percussion instrument, timpani, xylophone, marimba, you name it. I can play all the classical percussion instruments. But that was the soundtrack that was playing in my head. And then I was a big YouTube guy, and so Grant Cardone was somebody I was listening to a lot. David Rubenstein's show, doing interviews one-on-one with folks, that was informing my perspective. People would recommend books. I actually got a chance to meet John Jacob on campus, and I said, can you give me any books? He brought me like 12 books back, and I was just reading as much as I could to try to understand and expose myself to people who had done it before. Read Reginald Lewis's book. That's the first time I heard about Mike Milken, right? So it's incredible how the world kind of comes full circle there. Just trying to get exposed. My first exposure to venture capital was in D.C. So
after Howard?
At Howard. At Howard, yeah. I was walking down the street, I kid you not, and kept seeing this firm, Village Capital. Never heard of it, but just kept seeing it. It was like, this sounds like something I want to be a part of. And went inside one day, got up enough courage, went inside, and they explained to me social impact investing.
Yeah.
I said, man, this sounds like something I want to be part of. I already had the community development background, had some policy experience under my belt, and they gave me a book, The Innovation Blind Spot, and explained to me the power endowments and pensions have in terms of creating a different world. I said, man, this is something that I want to do with my life. And that was, from that moment forward, that was how I decided to get on this career trajectory.
Yeah. And as you're navigating corporate America, you find yourself, at a job. And again, you read Reginald Lewis' book, hear Michael Milken, find out about the conference, see how much the ticket is. Black man, I don't know how many that's an expensive ticket. But again, this is what's going through your mind right now, right? How did Reginald Lewis's book change you after you read it? Because I'm assuming you read that after you graduated Howard.
Yeah, I did.
And what year did you read this?
Yeah, I read this probably 2018.
2018. Okay.
And it shifted what was possible. And Howard had been doing that along the way every single time. And so, people don't necessarily know about Frank Thomas and know about Reginald Lewis and know about Vernon Jordan. But you get to meet some of these folks, and you hear about them, and your professors are talking about them, and people are talking about them on campus in various conversations, and it just, what's possible continues to expand. I think that's what's so special about our HBCU program, is watching students from Little Rock, Arkansas, from Central State University in Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, and not in the part of Dayton that's populated. We have to go through corn stalks to get to Central State and Wilberforce. To see students from Wiley University in Marshall, Texas, right? Population size probably less than 50,000, right? Small schools, and say, come here. I want to show you the world of finance. I want to expose you to the world of Wall Street. I want to show you the people who've made it, who look like you, who've been where you want to go, and been maybe where you don't even know is possible. It sounds like a faraway world that doesn't exist, but it does. And so I think those kinds of things, I think, really transform me. So reading Reginald's book and understanding in so many ways why he wanted to start Beatrice, how he got there every step of the way, the story of how he got into Harvard Law School, right? It wasn't a traditional path. He had to go an odd way, and he knew and understood his skill set. So it was a transformative experience to understand in so many ways how he built his life.
Yeah, and this is why should white guys have all the fun?
Yes.
Make sure that because people may not know who Reginald Lewis is, may not know of the book, but your path to Milken, right? Yeah. To work at Milken Institute. Here you go, you find out about it, right? You go to the conference, but working there, how did that come about? And did you get a chance to meet Michael Milken? Did he offer you the job right there over dinner? what was that like? What was that process?
Yeah, great question. On the Milken side, I was working at an investment firm, investing in climate tech companies, as well as
is that Next
funds.
Gen?
Yeah, Next Era.
Next Era.
As a venture capital investor, and we were focused on fund of funds, many of them first-time fund managers, and so I met a ton of first-time fund managers doing those investments. And I recognized it was a $100 per year commitment over 5 years, so $500 million commitment for 5 years, and the entire strategy is about $2.5 billion over 5 years. And I recognized the weight of the problem was too large for what we were trying to accomplish, right? The scale of the problem, our solution wasn't big enough to reach it. So where can I go? Right, where if I wanted to solve a problem at scale, I would have the leverage to do that. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but that was where my mind was. I said, hey, we have an $82 trillion asset management industry. 1.4% of it is controlled by diverse and women-owned firms. Where can I go not to do $100 million a year, not to do $100 million over 5 years or $500 million over 5 years? Where can I go to drive transformative change to bring that number up? And the Milken Institute opportunity came to me through a fund that I invested in and said, hey, there's somebody looking for an opportunity here that makes sense. You should connect with them. And the rest is kind of history. I had no idea I'd end up at a think tank. I was an investor. I was in financial services. Had no idea that I'd end up at the Milken Institute. Like I said, I knew who Mike Milken was and had heard about him, had seen interviews with him, but had no idea I'd end up here. But it's just incredible how life, like I said, comes full circle and how things really come together in the end.
And how long have you been at Milken Institute now?
Yeah, about 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Right. Are you trying to make it 20, 30? At a point, because it gets about like a continuity and then it gets about like longevity. I tell a lot of young people, they hop job. I'm like, wait, you want your 401k to grow, right? You want longevity. Like, are this is going to be a long-term play for you?
Yeah, I tell people at the Milken Institute, we age in dog years.
So, I like that.
Although I've been here 2.5 years, it feels like 20 already.
Yeah. Because you're working on them banker hours.
Working those hours. But more importantly, I think the level of impact we drive year round. And so you brought up our global conference that takes place in May, bring together about 5,000 individuals from around the world. We're talking about former presidents, current presidents, vice presidents,
powerful
CEOs,
people,
CIOs, right? Some of the most powerful people on the planet thinking through ideas collectively, both publicly and privately. And so that is incredible impact, but we're doing that year round at smaller convenings, at private roundtables, with papers, with projects like the HBCU project. And so, I think there's a timeliness to that. I don't know, how long I'll be here, but as long as I'm here, I want to continue to drive impact.
Yeah. Well, listen, as long as you're here, you got work to do, right? So how can we take that, or you guys take that and go from 20 students to maybe 100 per cohort? Like, what does that process look like? What's it going to take? How much money is it going to take?
Yeah, I think we've had some great partners along the way.
Right.
So the Kauffman Foundation was our original sponsor. We are working with them, as well as the T.D. Jakes Foundation. We had Bishop Jakes at the conference last year to announce a partnership with Wells Fargo. And so we've had some incredible partners. But to your point, I think this opportunity is an opportunity to scale. We've proven that this program works. I like to talk about Henry Cloud's principle of perspective, that where you are determines what you see, right? And so if you sit in a specific seat and you don't see something, it's because of where you're sitting. But if I change your location, I'm going to change your perspective.
That's right.
And so I want to make sure that we touch as many students as possible. To your point, we've been doing it for about 3 years now, 20 students per cohort, but that should be 1,000 students per cohort, and we need scale to help get there. I'm open to any and all gifts, and so don't want to.
So am I.
Yeah, I don't want to limit it, but we work with foundations. We have a council of what we call our Inclusive Capitalism Executive Council. And so Apollo, BlackRock, Carlyle, Ares, right, some of the largest asset managers on the planet, as well as some diverse, emerging, small, middle market firms as well that are coming up through the pipe that are helping to inform this work as well and get to the program.
Yeah, I love that, man. I love that what you guys are doing. You remind me of this is another nonprofit, Alt Finance, Brother Marcus Shaw, phenomenal work, just trying to drive more youth to the financial markets,
Absolutely.
right? And so with that said, let's give people some takeaways, right? Because they're gonna be looking at you like, come on, man, what this brother got to tell me about the markets? Looking at things overall, right? First of all, before we jump there, you talk to a parent. They walk up to you and say, man, I saw you in that Forbes video, right? You were sitting next to the nice ball-headed guy. What do you tell them if they say, hey, why should I push my kids into a career in finance?
Yeah, the world of finance influences and controls so much of the world. And whether you decide to stay in finance or not, just understanding how the world works through the lens of finance is incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
You look at many entrepreneurs, they come out of the world of finance. They've spent time in investment banking or in private equity or venture capital, and they're able to take that experience and go and articulate their vision to investors. And so if your child is interested in entrepreneurship, they should be interested in finance. Your child is interested in crypto, they should be interested in finance. Your child's interested in AI, they should be interested in finance. And so no matter what field it is, right, there's an opportunity to learn at the seat of people who've been investing for a long time to say, how does this all come together? How does a deal come together? Why does somebody invest or not? Why does somebody buy a company? So often we build companies, right? Whether that's small scale mom and pop shops, whether it's a barbershop, a beauty salon, with no idea on how to exit that opportunity.
That's right.
You shouldn't build an opportunity with the expectation to keep it forever. There should be a liquidity event that allows you to see some of that hard work back. And so if you get exposed to finance early enough, when you build a business, you're thinking, well, how am I going to get out of this, right? How am I going to exit? Who's the right buyer for this business? Is this going to IPO? Is this big enough to IPO? You begin to ask those questions in a different way.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what I would tell a parent.
You know, it's something I was asking some friends of mine in finance, and I'm like, where should people really, especially Black communities, start to seek opportunities? And you let me know if you agree with this, because, the individual said, instead of starting businesses, we should really be seeking businesses that already exist, so we don't have to start from scratch. And I'm like, man, that's a great idea, because think about it. That tombstone maker in a certain community might want to be selling right now, go retire in Florida, and that's a built-in infrastructure. You can go buy it, and you know that business is going to last because everybody dies. I hate to say that, right? And I wanted to use that example because businesses that are probably ready to sell, businesses that are already out there functioning with clientele bases, making revenue, should you think more entrepreneurs should be seeking to maybe go buy one instead of start one from the very beginning?
There's a new movement called the Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition movement, ETA. And the idea is to expose people to the idea that you can buy a business as opposed to build a business.
Absolutely.
And you can bring a level of sophistication to that business without having to start from scratch. And so if you buy a barbershop business, maybe that barbershop business isn't online today. You asked me why I got in so early. I had to get a haircut this morning. And I seen an interview you did with John Hope Bryant, who said there's a booking app. I said, there's a booking app. So I got on the booking app, looked up a barbershop, got in the chair, 9 o'clock. I booked my take a step back. I booked my haircut at 12 midnight last night for a 9 a.m. haircut this morning. Got in the chair, walked out at 9:30, was ready to go for an interview. And so there's a level of sophistication that young people can bring with AI, with digital, with marketing, with social media that can help to scale a business. And then you bring that know-how on how to exit the business. What does that mean for, what does it mean for how does this business trade, right? What is, how do I get this business to profitability? How do I get it to scale, right? Is there an opportunity maybe to do some franchising, right? You begin to think in a different way on not just, I want to start a business and be the only person who works on my business, but I want to start a business and I want it to be 100 people, 200 people, 500 people, 500,000 people, right? How do I get from there to here?
Yes. Yeah. That's, I mean, listen, I think that's a brilliant, it was the entrepreneur's acquisition is what is it again?
Entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Yeah.
ETA.
ETA.
Oh, okay. So it's like ETA, that's made time of arrival. Now I got entrepreneur, right? Through acquisition.
There you
right?
go.
ETA.
There you go.
Let's look ahead, man, because first of all, have you ever made $1 million?
I haven't made $1 million.
Okay, you haven't made $1 million.
Yeah.
We all want to make $1 million.
Not personally.
I always tell people, I always ask that question. If you make $1 million, tell us how you made it, tell us how you spent it. But since we're excluded from that right now, I'm not a millionaire yet, but I tell people I'm like about, I don't know, $1 million away from being there. Yeah. Right, there you go. But let's look into some other stuff, man, because on another podcast, and this is one of your first ones, man, back in 2020, you said something that was very interesting. You said, your money will die in a savings account, right? Your money will die in a savings account. And I'm like, man, that's very interesting because I just opened up a CD account for my daughter about a year ago at 5% interest, right?
Yeah.
That's a savings account in a way. You still hold that same philosophy here in 2025 with interest rates where they are, as well as there is some fear that they could be possibly heading up with the tariff talks and everything like that. You still hold that same philosophy?
Yeah, it was not as nuanced as it could have been.
Yeah.
But I do share in many ways that philosophy right now, that there's an opportunity to participate in ownership, right? So whether that's investing in your 401k, right? There's an opportunity to own equities, own pieces of companies in the U.S. stock market. As crazy as things seem to be right now in the U.S., I talk to investors all the time. People are not any more bullish on the U.S. than they've ever been. People could not be more bullish on the U.S., right? The sustainability of government, the strength of capital markets exists in the U.S. in ways they don't exist in other parts of the world. And so people are clamoring to get their money into the U.S. to make sure it grows. And so I would ask the questions to the audience, what are you doing to participate in that? Are you participating in real estate? Are you buying equities? Are you participating in private deals? Are you starting a business? There is no better country in the world to start a business, grow it, and exit than the U.S.
Yeah.
And so if you're just investing in a savings account and not doing anything else, that's not a way to prosperity.
No, but even a savings account at like 7% interest, like if it goes up, what if the interest keeps going up, man?
There's a place for savings accounts, right? Yeah. I'm not saying if you have an emergency savings account or you have a rainy savings day fund. I think those things are important, right? But I would just say get involved in the markets, right? It's the only pathway forward.
Yeah, it was a small savings account, but I just felt that you said that. I'm like, man, what is he talking about? But listen, you mentioned 401ks, right? Wall Street Journal just came out with a article that said about half, or maybe more, a little bit more than half of all 401ks in the private sector, right? No more pensions. It's all 401ks, right? And I'm assuming public sector will come. Talk to mutual people. We probably know in the same circles. Man, you were just talking about this in D.C. about the pension crisis from some cities and states that they're going to have to endure because the funds aren't there. So more people are going to be shifting their savings and their future on 401ks. And that same article, though, what was scary is that 40% of Americans don't have enough to retire on. I was just in New Orleans not too long ago talking to a server. He's about 70s, in his 70s. And I said, man, don't you want to retire? He says, man, I would love to. I can't afford it. That stuck with me, man. When you talk about 401ks, for that youngster out there who bypassed on it, maybe like I did when I was younger, how important is it to maybe kind of like really educate yourself on what that is? Because young people aren't prepared to get old. And financing, that matters when you're getting old.
Yeah. There's a phrase that says the best time to plant a tree is yesterday. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Yes.
Right? And so if you're not participating in your 401k, you're not participating in your 403b or whatever your retirement vehicle is, you can still start today, right? It wouldn't be as ideal if you had started yesterday, but it's still a great time to start today. What would I tell to young people? You're going to get old someday. Right, and you're going to need a 401k, a 403b, or some sort of savings vehicle to make sure you're able to survive past your working years. It's hard to imagine what that is, but I see it as any other investment for the long term. Right, if you're thinking about, I'm going to have kids someday, I'm going to have grandkids someday, I'm going to have health needs someday. If you have parents who are older or grandparents who are older, imagine the kind of stress that you won't have to have being, having to be in a position where someone has to take care of you, but you can take care of them. And so I would really encourage people to get involved. Within that, there was a shift about 30 or 40 years ago, to your point, from public pensions, specifically to 401ks, and there wasn't the kind of financial literacy associated with it. When a pension is run for you, you don't have to know where your pension is invested. The state, the city, the county has made a promise, has said to you, you're going to receive a check for the rest of your life at this dollar amount every single month. How that money gets there, you couldn't care. But when it's a 401k, it's your money that you're investing on your behalf. And so I think it would behoove the audience, it behoove those who are engaging in 401k to be interested in some of the stocks that your 401k is invested in, to be interested in some of the fixed income products that your 401k is invested in, and try to understand some of the things. There are some phenomenal podcasts. You can, throw a rock and hit a great financial literacy podcast. Our friend John Hope Bryant has a great financial literacy book, right? There are a lot of tools to get exposed to it. There are companies that'll pay for you to learn more about financial literacy and then invest more into your 401k. And the last thing I'll say is don't walk away from free money.
That's
and
right.
So many of those 401ks have match programs. And so just investing the minimum amount to receive the match from your company is really powerful because it's money that you were going to get anyway. But if you don't invest, you won't get that free money.
Yeah. I feel like it's a broken record, but I think it's still always important to listen. 401ks is serious. I mean, this is, again, people aren't prepared to get old across the board. Across the board, $2.1 trillion. That is what Nielsen and they're using information from the University of Georgia's economic growth, the Center of Economic Growth. $2.1 trillion. That is the estimated spending power for Black America. When you hear that number, what comes to mind?
Yeah. A small nation.
A small nation.
A small nation. That kind of spending power can be directed and have a major impact on the American economy, and already does.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. That's a big number, man.
Yeah.
Anything, if you recommend a stock, give somebody else something that you might have that's worked well for you, right? Something that's still going. What is it? We'll give somebody. I tell Mattel's doing well for my daughter, right?
Yeah.
They make all of the toys, and so I tell you about. What about yourself?
So there are two things that I think about. One, if you're in an industry, right? It doesn't matter, how big or how small you are in the industry. If you're in the industry and you understand it, you should have a better understanding of where you want to invest.
Yeah.
And so I have friends who are in aerospace. I say, well, what are your thoughts on Lockheed?
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on Boeing? Talk me through, you work in the industry. How are you thinking about it, right? And you have a leg up as somebody in the industry. If you're in real estate, you have an understanding of, actually, this real estate investment trust invest in this part of town or in these cities or in these class properties. I don't want to do that because I understand real estate at a different level. If you're an attorney, you have a better understanding of the kinds of legal risks that exist, right? So you have a leg up already. I want to get people kind of that confidence to say you know something and you can contribute to it. So before you start getting there, I would say I'm really bullish on AI. And as a consequence, I'm really bullish on any real estate investment trust that does data centers. And so if you're doing a data center, I'm interested in you. I want to learn more about you. Some of the components that are going to be built as a consequence of the CHIPS Act is really fascinating to me. But the data centers and the AI real estate investment trusts are the things that I'm most interested in.
You don't think anything's going to get reneged on the CHIPS Act because it seems like they're undoing everything that the Biden administration has done?
Yeah, I think DC teaches you that there's a lot of noise and there isn't always a lot of action to back up the noise.
Theatrics.
Yeah, there's a lot of theatrics. There's a lot of saber-tooth rattling around what can and can't be done. You have to remember that constituencies decide what happens. And so if you're calling your congressman, you're calling your senator, and you're saying, I don't want this clawed back, this money impacts me in the following ways, that congressman, that senator knows, I can't do that. Mm-hmm. I may not stay in office, right? And so there's a level of political pressure and action you can take advantage of to make sure some of those things. But I'm less concerned about the CHIPS Act than I think other people are.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way to say it, man. I get you out of here on good to great. And this is your world, right? And appreciate all the time, man. Would love to have you back. Great stuff that you're doing over at the Milken Institute, helping out HBCU students, again, creating that on-ramp, phenomenal stuff, man. And I love that it's a part of the overall theme of, inclusive capitalism. Yeah. People may think it's a DEI thing, and I'm like, no, it's inclusive capitalism. Yeah. John O'Brien always says in that type of tone, but good to great. It's the difference between a good investor and a great one.
Yeah, consistency. If you don't have intensity, right, you can still have consistency. You, as a retail investor, you can put away money every single month consistently. And that money, whether it performs exceptionally well, performs okay, is still going to be better over time. LeBron James is one of the greatest players of all time. I think he's the GOAT. But one of the greatest players of all time, not because he won one championship one year or because he was great for a year, but because he was consistent over time. Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Tiger Woods, these folks, Serena Williams, these folks are consistent in their practice, consistent in their performance. And so investing is the same way. Can you be consistent, not have a great quarter, not have a great year? Can you be consistent over 20 years?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Does Troy Duffie have a theme over the next few months about, hey, what is the financial markets telling us? What is that theme?
Yeah. 68% of the Fortune 500 was started during a recession. You should be grounded. Warren Buffett says you should be excited or exuberant when others are fearful. You should be grounded in moments like this where it feels like you don't know what's next and you don't know where rates are going to go. You should be steadfast. Remind yourself that you've been here before. Remind yourself that you know what's going on, that you can read through the noise, and you can keep one step in front of the other. And so I think that's the theme, whether it's the stuff going on in D.C., whether it's the stuff that's coming out of tariffs, the stuff that's coming on with rates. Be grounded.
Be grounded.
Don't lose your head. Don't lose your mind. Be grounded.
Yeah. And don't open a savings account.
There you go.
Troy Duffie, I appreciate the time, man, here at the Forbes studio. And again, a big fan. Cannot wait to get out there in Beverly Hills, man. Have to have you back when you guys are starting to get those 1,000 students on that arm wrap.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.